Fact 1. The fall of the Western Roman Empire. Causes and consequences. The decline and eventual fall of the Western Roman Empire is one of the most debated and complex events in history. It was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual process spanning centuries, influenced by a confluence of factors including internal political instability, economic problems, military overstretch, and external pressures from migrating barbarian tribes. Understanding these contributing factors and their interplay is crucial to comprehending the transformation of the ancient world and the emergence of medieval Europe. The Western Roman Empire, once a symbol of unparalleled power and civilization, faced a multitude of challenges that gradually eroded its foundations. One of the most significant factors was political instability. The late Roman Empire was plagued by civil wars, power struggles, and assassinations. Emperors rose and fell quickly, often with the support of the army. This constant political turmoil weakened the central government and made it difficult to effectively govern the vast empire. The frequent changes in leadership also led to inconsistent policies and a lack of long-term planning. Economic problems also contributed to the decline of the Western Roman Empire. The empire faced a growing financial crisis, fueled by excessive spending, inflation, and declining trade. The cost of maintaining a large army and a vast bureaucracy placed a heavy burden on the imperial treasury. The devaluation of Roman currency led to inflation, which made it difficult for people to afford basic necessities. The disruption of trade routes due to barbarian incursions and internal conflicts further weakened the economy. The heavy taxation imposed on the population led to resentment and resistance, further destabilizing the empire. Military overstretch was another significant factor in the decline of the Western Roman Empire. The empire had grown too large to defend effectively. The Roman army was stretched thin across vast frontiers, facing constant threats from barbarian tribes. The army was also becoming increasingly reliant on barbarian mercenaries, who were often less loyal and less disciplined than Roman soldiers. The cost of maintaining a large army also strained the empire's finances. The constant warfare drained resources and manpower, weakening the empire's ability to respond to crises. External pressures from migrating barbarian tribes played a crucial role in the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Beginning in the 4th century CE, various barbarian tribes, such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, began to migrate into Roman territory. These tribes were often fleeing from other groups or seeking better opportunities within the empire. The Romans were initially able to accommodate some of these tribes, but the increasing numbers of migrants overwhelmed the empire's resources and defenses. The barbarian tribes often clashed with Roman forces, and they eventually established their own kingdoms within the empire. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 CE was a major turning point, demonstrating the empire's vulnerability to barbarian attacks. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a single event, but a gradual process that culminated in the deposition of the last Roman emperor in 476 CE. By this time, the Western Roman Empire had been reduced to a small territory in Italy. The barbarian kingdoms had become the dominant powers in Western Europe. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive for centuries after the fall of the West. The consequences of the fall of the Western Roman Empire were profound and far-reaching. The collapse of Roman authority led to a period of political fragmentation and social upheaval in Western Europe. The barbarian kingdoms replaced Roman rule, and Europe entered the Middle Ages. The Roman legal system, administrative structures, and cultural traditions gradually faded away, although some elements survived and influenced the development of medieval society. The decline of trade and urban centers led to a more rural and agrarian society. The loss of Roman infrastructure, such as roads and aqueducts, hindered economic development. The rise of Christianity as the dominant religion in Europe was accelerated by the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The church became a powerful institution, providing stability and guidance in a chaotic world. The legacy of the Roman Empire continued to influence European culture and thought for centuries, inspiring artists, writers, and political leaders. The study of Roman history, law, and literature became an important part of education in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. The idea of a unified and prosperous empire continued to resonate in European political thought. Fact 2. The Roman army's logistics and engineering prowess. The Roman army was not just a fighting force. It was a highly organized, self-sufficient machine that owed much of its success to its exceptional logistics and engineering capabilities. The scale and sophistication of their logistical network allowed them to project power across vast distances and sustain long campaigns, while their engineering feats facilitated conquest, infrastructure development, and long-term control of conquered territories. One of the most crucial aspects of Roman military logistics was the systematic supply chain. The army required massive amounts of food, weapons, armor, tools, building materials, and other necessities. To ensure a constant flow of supplies, the Romans developed a sophisticated network of roads, waterways, and depots. Roman roads, such as the Appian Way, were marvels of engineering. Constructed with layers of carefully packed stone and gravel, these roads allowed for the rapid movement of troops and supplies. They weren't just for military use. They also facilitated trade and communication, further integrating conquered regions into the Roman system. Waterways were also heavily utilized. Rivers and coastal routes provided an efficient means of transporting bulk goods. Harbors were improved and expanded to accommodate the large number of ships required to support the army. The Romans established a network of depots and storage facilities along their supply routes. These depots served as central points for receiving, storing, and distributing supplies. They were strategically located to ensure that troops could be readily resupplied, even in remote areas. The army also relied on local resources to supplement its supply chain. They often requisitioned food and materials from conquered populations, although this practice could sometimes lead to resentment and resistance. The Roman army's logistical organization was incredibly detailed. Each legion had its own support staff responsible for managing supplies and equipment. These staff members kept meticulous records of inventory and ensured that troops had everything they needed. Beyond logistics, Roman military engineering was legendary. Roman soldiers were not just warriors. They were also skilled builders and engineers. They were capable of constructing a wide range of structures, from temporary fortifications to permanent infrastructure. One of the most impressive feats of Roman military engineering was the construction of fortified camps. When an army was on the move, they would build a temporary camp each night. These camps were carefully designed and constructed according to a standard plan. They typically included a defensive perimeter, gates, and internal roads. The speed and efficiency with which the Romans could build these camps was remarkable. It provided them with a secure base of operations, even in hostile territory. The Romans were also masters of siege warfare. They developed a wide range of siege engines, such as catapults, ballistae, and siege towers. These machines allowed them to breach enemy fortifications and capture cities. The Romans were also skilled at building bridges. They constructed both temporary pontoon bridges and permanent stone bridges. These bridges allowed them to cross rivers and other obstacles, facilitating their advance. Roman engineers were also responsible for building aqueducts, which supplied cities with fresh water. Aqueducts were essential for the growth and prosperity of Roman cities. They also built roads, sewers, and public buildings. These structures were not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. They served as a symbol of Roman power and civilization. The combination of logistics and engineering expertise gave the Roman army a significant advantage over its enemies. They could move quickly, sustain themselves in the field, and overcome any obstacle. This enabled them to conquer and control a vast empire. The Roman army's logistics and engineering prowess was a key factor in its success. It allowed them to project power, sustain long campaigns, and build a vast empire. The Roman army was a force to be reckoned with, and its legacy continues to inspire awe and admiration today. The discipline and organization of the Roman army are still studied today, showcasing the lasting impact of their innovations in military strategy and engineering. The ability to construct roads, bridges, and fortifications quickly and efficiently allowed the Roman Empire to expand and maintain control over its vast territories. The systematic approach to logistics ensured that the army was always well supplied and ready for battle, a crucial element in their military dominance. Fact 3: Roman art and architecture, styles, innovations, and legacy. Roman art and architecture were deeply intertwined with Roman culture, politics, and social life. The Romans were not only skilled engineers and builders, but also innovative artists who adapted and transformed existing styles to create their own unique aesthetic. From a monumental architecture of public buildings and temples to the realistic portraiture and decorative arts, Roman art and architecture served to glorify the empire, commemorate achievements, and reflect the values of Roman society. Understanding the styles, innovations, and legacy of Roman art and architecture is crucial to appreciating the cultural achievements of the Roman world. Roman art was heavily influenced by Greek art, but it developed its own distinct characteristics. The Romans admired Greek art and often copied or adapted Greek sculptures, paintings, and architectural designs. However, Roman artists also developed their own styles and techniques. Roman art was often more realistic and practical than Greek art. Roman sculptures, for example, were often portraits of real people, while Greek sculptures tended to be idealized representations of gods and goddesses. Roman architecture was known for its grandeur, its use of concrete, and its emphasis on functionality. Roman architecture was characterized by its massive scale, its use of arches and vaults, and its reliance on concrete. The Romans were masters of concrete construction, and they used concrete to build a wide range of structures, including aqueducts, bridges, amphitheaters, and buildings. The use of arches and vaults allowed the Romans to create large, open spaces without the need for interior supports. Roman architecture was not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. Roman buildings were often decorated with columns, sculptures, and mosaics. Some of the most important examples of Roman architecture include the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and the Roman Forum. The Colosseum was a massive amphitheater that was used for gladiatorial games and other public spectacles. It could seat up to 50,000 spectators. The Pantheon was a temple dedicated to all the gods. It is known for its massive dome, which is one of the largest unsupported domes in the world. The Roman Forum was the center of Roman political, religious, and social life. It contained a variety of buildings, including temples, basilicas, and senate houses. Roman sculpture was characterized by its realism, its portraiture, and its use of marble. Roman sculptors created portraits of emperors, senators, and other prominent citizens. These portraits were often highly realistic, capturing the individual features and personalities of the subjects. Roman sculptors also created statues of gods and goddesses, as well as mythological scenes. Roman painting was characterized by its use of perspective, its realism, and its vibrant colors. Roman painters created frescoes, wall paintings, and panel paintings. Roman frescoes were often used to decorate the walls of houses, villas, and public buildings. Roman panel paintings were often portraits or mythological scenes. The legacy of Roman art and architecture is profound and far-reaching. Roman architectural styles and techniques have been adopted and adapted by cultures throughout the world. Roman art has inspired countless artists and writers. The study of Roman art and architecture continues to be an important part of art history and cultural studies. The use of concrete, the development of arches and vaults, and the emphasis on functionality have all had a lasting impact on architecture. The realistic portraiture and narrative scenes in Roman art have influenced artists for centuries. The monumental scale and grandeur of Roman buildings continue to inspire awe and admiration. The ruins of Roman cities and monuments serve as a reminder of the power and ingenuity of the Roman civilization. The integration of art and architecture into public life in Roman society highlights the importance of aesthetics and cultural expression. Fact 4. The Roman legal system and its enduring influence. The Roman legal system, developed over centuries, was one of the most sophisticated and influential legal frameworks in history. Its principles and concepts continue to shape legal systems around the world, particularly in civil law jurisdictions. The Romans transitioned from a system of unwritten customary law to a codified system that emphasized fairness, reason, and the protection of individual rights. This evolution laid the foundation for modern legal thought and practice. The earliest form of Roman law was based on custom and tradition, passed down orally from one generation to the next. These unwritten laws were often interpreted and applied by the patrician class, which held significant power in early Roman society. However, as the plebeian class gained more influence, they demanded a written code of laws that would be accessible to all citizens. This led to the creation of the 12 Tables in the 5th century BCE, a landmark achievement in Roman legal history. The 12 Tables were inscribed on bronze tablets and displayed publicly in the Roman Forum. They covered a wide range of topics, including property rights, family law, and criminal procedure. While relatively brief and somewhat rudimentary by modern standards, the 12 Tables provided a basic framework for Roman law and serve as a foundation for future legal developments. They represented a significant step towards a more just and equitable legal system. Over time, Roman law continued to evolve and expand. New laws were enacted by the Roman Senate and popular assemblies. Legal scholars, known as jurists, played an increasingly important role in interpreting and applying the law. These jurists were highly respected, and their opinions often carried significant weight in legal proceedings. One of the most important developments in Roman law was the concept of ius gentium, or the law of nations. This was a body of law that applied to foreigners and to legal issues that arose between Romans and foreigners. Ius gentium was based on principles of natural law and reason, and it helped to facilitate trade and diplomacy with other cultures. The development of ius civil, or civil law, was also crucial. This encompassed the law specific to Roman citizens and governed a wide range of private matters, including contracts, property, and inheritance. Roman jurists meticulously analyzed and interpreted existing laws, providing commentary and developing new legal principles to address evolving societal needs. The praetor, a Roman magistrate, played a key role in shaping Roman law. The praetor issued edicts, which were public announcements of legal principles that he would apply in his court. These edicts helped to clarify and refine existing laws, and they also introduced new legal concepts. The culmination of Roman legal development came with the codification of law under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century CE. Justinian commissioned a team of legal experts to compile and organize all existing Roman laws into a comprehensive code. This code, known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, body of civil law, consisted of 4 parts. The code, a collection of imperial statutes. The digest, a compilation of legal opinions from Roman jurists. The institutes, a textbook for law students. And the novelli, new laws enacted by Justinian. The Corpus Juris Civilis was a monumental achievement that preserved and systematized centuries of Roman legal thought. It became the foundation of legal systems in many European countries and continues to influence legal systems around the world today. The enduring influence of Roman law can be seen in many aspects of modern legal systems. For example, the concept of natural law, which asserts that there are certain universal rights and principles that are inherent in human nature, is rooted in Roman legal thought. The idea that laws should be based on reason and fairness, rather than on arbitrary power, is also a legacy of Roman law. Roman law also influenced the development of contract law, property law, and criminal law. Many of the legal terms and concepts used in modern law, such as negligence, fraud, and prescription, are derived from Roman law. The emphasis on due process and the right to a fair trial can also be traced back to Roman legal principles. The Roman legal system was not without its flaws. It was often biased in favor of the wealthy and powerful, and it did not always protect the rights of women and slaves. However, it represented a significant step forward in the development of legal systems, and its influence can still be felt today. The Roman legal system's emphasis on codification, legal scholarship, and the application of reason to legal problems laid the groundwork for modern legal systems. The Corpus Juris Civilis remains a testament to the Romans' commitment to law and justice, and its principles continue to resonate in legal systems around the globe. The detailed procedures for legal proceedings, the focus on evidence and argumentation, and the development of legal remedies all reflect the Romans' dedication to creating a fair and effective legal system. Fact 5. Roman women, roles, rights, and influence. Roman women occupied a complex and multifaceted position in Roman society. While they were generally excluded from formal political power and public office, they played significant roles in family life, economic activity, and religious observances. The rights and freedoms of Roman women varied depending on their social class, marital status, and the period of Roman history. Understanding the roles, rights, and influence of Roman women provides valuable insights into the social dynamics and gender relations of the Roman world. The roles of Roman women were primarily defined by their family and household responsibilities. Roman women were expected to marry and bear children, and they were responsible for raising and educating their children. They also managed the household, oversaw the work of slaves, and supervised the family's finances. In wealthy families, women might also be involved in managing the family's business affairs. The legal rights of Roman women were limited compared to those of men. Women could not vote, hold public office, or serve in the army. They were also subject to the authority of their fathers or husbands. However, Roman women did have some legal rights. They could own property, conduct business, and make wills. They could also divorce their husbands, although divorce was relatively rare. The influence of Roman women extended beyond the domestic sphere. Women could exert influence through their husbands and sons. Wealthy women often had considerable power and influence behind the scenes. They could advise their husbands on political matters, and they could use their wealth and social connections to advance their family's interests. Some Roman women were also patrons of the arts and sciences, and they supported writers, artists, and intellectuals. The lives of Roman women varied greatly depending on their social class. Wealthy women enjoyed a life of luxury and privilege. They had access to education, fine clothing, and elaborate entertainment. They could also travel and participate in social events. Poor women, on the other hand, faced a much more difficult life. They often worked as laborers, domestic servants, or prostitutes. They had limited access to education and health care, and they were often subjected to abuse and exploitation. The status of Roman women changed over time. During the early Republic, women were subject to the authority of their fathers or husbands throughout their lives. They had limited legal rights and little social influence. However, during the late Republic and the Empire, women gained more freedom and independence. They were able to own property, conduct business, and divorce their husbands. They also played a more prominent role in public life. The perception of Roman women in historical sources is often shaped by the biases and perspectives of male authors. It is important to consider the limitations of these sources when studying the lives of Roman women. Archaeological evidence, such as inscriptions and artifacts, can provide additional insights into the lives of Roman women. The diversity of experiences among Roman women, based on their social class, geographic location, and historical period, highlights the complexity of gender roles in Roman society. The concept of familia, which included all members of the household, emphasized the importance of women in maintaining family traditions and values. The influence of powerful women, such as Livia Drusilla and Agrippina the Younger, demonstrates the ability of women to exert political power even in the absence of formal authority. Fact 6. Roman trade and commerce. Networks and commodities. Roman trade and commerce were essential for the economic prosperity and integration of the Roman Empire. A vast network of trade routes, both land and sea, connected distant regions, facilitating the exchange of goods, resources, and ideas. The Roman economy thrived on the efficient movement of commodities such as grain, wine, olive oil, manufactured goods, and luxury items. Understanding the networks and commodities involved in Roman trade and commerce provides valuable insights into the economic foundations and global connections of the Roman world. Roman trade routes extended throughout the Mediterranean region, as well as into Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roman merchants traveled by land and sea, using well-maintained roads and navigable waterways. The Roman army played an important role in protecting trade routes from bandits and pirates. The Roman government also invested in infrastructure, such as harbors, warehouses, and marketplaces to facilitate trade. One of the most important commodities traded in the Roman Empire was grain. Rome relied on imports of grain from North Africa, Egypt, and other regions to feed its large population. The grain trade was carefully regulated by the Roman government, which ensured that there was a sufficient supply of grain to prevent food shortages and riots. Other important commodities included wine, olive oil, and manufactured goods. Wine was produced in Italy, Gaul, and Spain, and it was exported throughout the empire. Olive oil was produced in Italy, North Africa, and Spain, and it was used for cooking, lighting, and bathing. Manufactured goods, such as pottery, textiles, and metalwork, were produced in various regions of the empire and traded throughout the Roman world. Luxury items were also an important part of Roman trade. Wealthy Romans purchased luxury goods from all over the empire and beyond. These goods included silk from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa. The trade in luxury goods was often very profitable, but also involved significant risks such as piracy and shipwrecks. Roman merchants established trading posts and settlements in distant lands to facilitate trade. These trading posts served as centers for the exchange of goods and information. They also helped to spread Roman culture and influence. The Roman government played an active role in promoting trade and commerce. The government standardized weights and measures, created a common currency, and enforced contracts. The government also built and maintained infrastructure such as roads, harbors, and marketplaces. The government's policies helped to create a stable and predictable environment for trade, which encouraged economic growth and prosperity. Roman trade had a significant impact on the development of the Roman Empire. Trade brought wealth and resources to Rome, which allowed the city to grow and prosper. Trade also facilitated the exchange of ideas and culture, which helped to create a more unified and cosmopolitan society. The integration of diverse regions into a single economic system through trade fostered interdependence and stability. The rise of a merchant class contributed to the growth of urban centers and the development of a more complex economy. The Roman emphasis on standardized weights, measures, and currency facilitated trade and reduced transaction costs. The legacy of Roman trade continues to be felt today in the form of global trade networks and international commerce. Fact 7. Roman engineering, aqueducts, roads, and public works. Roman engineering was renowned throughout the ancient world for its practicality, durability, and sheer scale. The Romans were masters of civil engineering, constructing a vast network of aqueducts, roads, bridges, and public buildings that not only facilitated the expansion and administration of their empire, but also left a lasting legacy of innovation and ingenuity. These engineering feats were essential for the economic prosperity, military dominance, and urban development of the Roman world. The Roman aqueducts were perhaps the most iconic symbol of Roman engineering prowess. These structures were designed to transport fresh water from distant sources to urban centers, providing a reliable supply of clean water for drinking, bathing, and sanitation. The Romans built hundreds of aqueducts throughout their empire, some of which stretched for dozens of miles. The aqueducts were typically constructed using a combination of gravity and arches. The water flowed through a channel built on top of the arches, gradually descending from the source to the city. The Romans carefully surveyed the terrain to ensure that the aqueduct had a consistent slope. They also used a variety of techniques to prevent leaks and to filter the water. The construction of Roman aqueducts was a complex and labor-intensive process. It required skilled engineers, surveyors, and a large workforce of laborers. The Romans used a variety of tools and techniques to build the aqueducts, including cranes, pulleys, and concrete. Roman concrete was a particularly important innovation. It was made from a mixture of lime, volcanic ash, and water. Roman concrete was incredibly strong and durable. It allowed the Romans to build structures that would last for centuries. The aqueducts were not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. They were often decorated with arches, columns, and sculptures. The aqueducts served as a symbol of Roman power and civilization. Roman roads were another essential component of the Roman infrastructure network. The Romans built a vast network of roads that connected all parts of their empire. These roads allowed for the rapid movement of troops, goods, and people. The Roman roads were also used for trade, communication, and administration. The roads were typically constructed using a layered system. The bottom layer was made of compacted earth, followed by a layer of gravel, a layer of small stones, and a top layer of paving stones. The roads were carefully engineered to ensure that they were durable and well-drained. The construction of Roman roads was a major undertaking. It required a large workforce of laborers and skilled engineers. The Romans used a variety of tools and techniques to build the roads, including surveying instruments, leveling tools, and paving stones. The roads were typically built in straight lines, even if it meant traversing difficult terrain. The Romans were willing to invest significant resources in road construction because they understood that it was essential for the economic and military success of their empire. The Roman roads were not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. They were often lined with trees, milestones, and monuments. In addition to aqueducts and roads, the Romans also built a wide range of other public works, including bridges, harbors, amphitheaters, and bathhouses. Roman bridges were renowned for their strength and durability. The Romans used a variety of techniques to build bridges, including arches, piers, and voussoirs. Roman harbors were essential for trade and naval operations. The Romans built harbors in strategic locations throughout their empire. These harbors were protected by breakwaters, jetties, and lighthouses. Roman amphitheaters were used for gladiatorial games and other public spectacles. The Colosseum in Rome is the most famous example of a Roman amphitheater. Roman bathhouses were public bathing facilities that were used by people of all social classes. The bathhouses included a variety of rooms, including hot baths, cold baths, and steam rooms. Roman engineering had a profound impact on the development of civilization. Roman engineering techniques were adopted by other cultures throughout the world. Roman aqueducts, roads, and public buildings continue to be used and admired today. The legacy of Roman engineering is a testament to the ingenuity, skill, and determination of the Roman people. The use of concrete, the development of arches and vaults, and the application of surveying techniques were all important contributions to the field of engineering. The sheer scale and ambition of Roman engineering projects demonstrate the Romans' ability to organize and manage complex undertakings. The durability of Roman structures, many of which still stand today, is a testament to the quality of their materials and workmanship. Fact 8. Roman military tactics and organization, the legionary system. The Roman military was a formidable force that conquered and controlled a vast empire for centuries. A key element of its success was its highly organized and adaptable legionary system, which evolved over time but consistently emphasized discipline, training, and strategic flexibility. The Roman legion was more than just a fighting unit. It was a self-sufficient, highly structured organization capable of building fortifications, managing supplies, and adapting to diverse battlefield conditions. Understanding the structure and tactics of the Roman legion is crucial to understanding Rome's military dominance. The Roman legion was the basic unit of the Roman army. It consisted of several thousand soldiers, typically around 5,000 men in the early Republic and gradually decreasing to around 4,000 to 5,000 in the later Empire. The legion was divided into smaller units called cohorts, maniples, and centuries. The cohort was the largest unit within the legion, consisting of approximately 480 men. The maniple was a smaller unit, consisting of approximately 120 men. The century was the smallest unit, consisting of approximately 80 men. The legion was commanded by a legionary legate, who was typically a senator or a member of the equestrian class. The legionary legate was assisted by a staff of officers, including tribunes, centurions, and standard bearers. The Roman legionary was a highly trained and disciplined soldier. He was typically a Roman citizen who had volunteered for military service. The legionary underwent rigorous training, which included marching, weapon handling, and combat drills. The legionary was also taught how to build fortifications, manage supplies, and maintain his equipment. The legionary was expected to be loyal, courageous, and obedient. He was also expected to be able to endure hardship and to fight effectively in a variety of terrains and conditions. The Roman legionary was armed with a gladius, a short sword, a pilum, a javelin, a scutum, a large shield, and a helmet. He also wore body armor, which typically consisted of a larica segmentata, segmented armor, or a larica hamata, mail armor. The Roman army employed a variety of tactics on the battlefield. The Romans typically deployed their legions in a linear formation, with the cohorts arranged in 3 lines. The first line consisted of the hastati, who were young and inexperienced soldiers. The second line consisted of the principes, who were experienced soldiers. The third line consisted of the triarii, who were veteran soldiers. The Roman army also used a variety of siege tactics, including the construction of siege towers, battering rams, and tunnels. The Romans were skilled at adapting their tactics to suit the specific conditions of the battlefield. They were also able to coordinate their movements effectively, thanks to their well-developed system of communication and command. The Roman army was renowned for its discipline and organization. The Romans had a strict code of military law, which was enforced by the centurions. The centurions were the backbone of the Roman army. They were responsible for training, disciplining, and leading their men in battle. The Roman army also had a well-developed system of logistics. The Romans were able to supply their armies with food, equipment, and medical care, even in remote areas. The Roman army's logistical capabilities were essential to its success. The Roman legionary system evolved over time, adapting to changing military conditions and technological advancements. During the late Republic and the Empire, the Roman army became increasingly professionalized. Soldiers served for longer periods of time, and they received better pay and benefits. The Roman army also became more reliant on auxiliary troops, who were recruited from conquered territories. The auxiliary troops were often used to supplement the legions in specialized roles, such as cavalry and archers. The Roman military had a profound impact on Roman society and culture. The army provided opportunities for social mobility, and it helped to spread Roman culture and language throughout the empire. The Roman army was also a major consumer of goods and services, which stimulated the Roman economy. The legacy of the Roman military continues to be felt today. The Roman military system has been studied and emulated by armies throughout history. The Roman emphasis on discipline, training, and organization remains relevant in modern military strategy. Fact 9. Roman bathhouses, social hubs, and centers of hygiene. Roman bathhouses, or thermae, were much more than just places to get clean. They were elaborate social hubs, centers of relaxation, and important institutions for maintaining hygiene and public health in Roman society. From modest neighborhood facilities to grand imperial complexes, bathhouses offered a range of services and activities that catered to people of all social classes, although often with separate facilities or times for different groups. The architecture, design, and daily routines of Roman bathhouses provide a fascinating glimpse into the social and cultural values of the Roman world. The development of Roman bathhouses can be traced back to the early Roman Republic, when simple public baths were built near natural hot springs or rivers. These early baths were primarily functional, providing a place for people to cleanse themselves. However, as Rome grew in wealth and power, bathhouses became increasingly elaborate and luxurious. By the time of the Roman Empire, bathhouses had evolved into complex structures with a variety of rooms and facilities. A typical Roman bathhouse included several key areas: the apoditerium, changing room; the frigidarium, cold bath; the tepidarium, warm bath; and the caldarium, hot bath. The apoditerium was a large room where people would undress and store their clothes in niches or lockers. The frigidarium was a cold room with a plunge pool filled with cold water. Bathers would often start or end their bathing routine with a dip in the frigidarium, which was believed to be invigorating and refreshing. The tepidarium was a warm room that served as a transitional space between the frigidarium and the caldarium. It was often heated by underfloor heating, known as a hypocaust system. The caldarium was the hottest room in the bathhouse, with a large pool of hot water and heated floor. Bathers would spend time in the caldarium to sweat and cleanse their skin. In addition to these core areas, many Roman bathhouses also included other facilities such as gymnasiums, libraries, gardens, and restaurants. These amenities transformed the bathhouses into social centers where people could exercise, read, relax, and socialize. Some bathhouses even had swimming pools, saunas, and massage parlors. The larger imperial bathhouses, such as the baths of Caracalla and the baths of Diocletian, were particularly grand and impressive. These complexes could accommodate thousands of people at a time and were decorated with elaborate mosaics, sculptures, and frescoes. The hypocaust system was a key innovation in Roman bathhouse technology. This system used a furnace to heat air, which was then circulated under the floors and through the walls of the bathhouse. The hypocaust system allowed the Romans to maintain a consistent temperature in the various rooms of the bathhouse, creating a comfortable and enjoyable bathing experience. The water in the bathhouse was heated by large boilers, which were often fueled by wood or coal. Bathing was an important part of daily life for many Romans. People would visit the bathhouses regularly to cleanse themselves, relax, and socialize. The bathhouses were open to people of all social classes, although there were often separate facilities or times for men and women. Wealthy Romans might visit the bathhouses every day, while poorer Romans might visit less frequently. The bathhouses were not only places for personal hygiene, but also centers of social interaction and cultural exchange. People would meet their friends, discuss business, and exchange news in the bathhouses. The decline of the Roman Empire led to the gradual decline of Roman bathhouses. As the empire's wealth and power waned, the bathhouses became less well-maintained and less popular. Many bathhouses were eventually abandoned or converted into other uses. However, the legacy of Roman bathhouses can still be seen today in the form of public baths, spas, and swimming pools around the world. The Roman bathhouses were a testament to the ingenuity and sophistication of Roman engineering and architecture. They were also a reflection of the Roman values of hygiene, health, and social interaction. The ruins of Roman bathhouses continue to attract tourists and scholars who are fascinated by the history and culture of the Roman Empire. The emphasis on public health and hygiene in Roman society is evident in a widespread availability of bathhouses, which played a crucial role in maintaining sanitation and preventing the spread of disease. Fact 10. Roman religion. From polytheism to Christianity. Roman religion, evolving over centuries, underwent a significant transformation from a polytheistic system deeply intertwined with the state to the eventual adoption of Christianity as the official religion of the empire. This transition was complex, involving shifts in beliefs, practices, and the relationship between religious authority and political power. The early Roman religion was heavily influenced by Greek mythology and Etruscan traditions, resulting in a pantheon of gods and goddesses with distinct roles and responsibilities. Initially, Roman religion was a polytheistic system, meaning that the Romans worshipped many gods and goddesses. These deities were believed to control various aspects of human life and the natural world. The most important gods were known as the dei Consens, who were the Roman equivalents of the Greek Olympian gods. Jupiter, Zeus, the king of the gods, was the most powerful deity in the Roman pantheon. Juno, Hera, his wife, was the goddess of marriage and childbirth. Neptune, Poseidon, was the god of the sea. Pluto, Hades, was the god of the underworld. Mars, Ares, was the god of war. Venus, Aphrodite, was the goddess of love and beauty. Apollo was the god of music and poetry. Diana, Artemis, was the goddess of the hunt. Minerva, Athena, was the goddess of wisdom and crafts. And Ceres, Demeter, was the goddess of agriculture. Each of these gods had their own temples and priests, and they were honored with sacrifices and festivals. Roman religion was deeply intertwined with the state. The emperor was considered the Pontifex Maximus, the highest priest in the Roman state religion. He oversaw all religious ceremonies and appointed priests to serve in the temples. Religious festivals were important social events that brought people together and reinforced their sense of community. The Romans believed that the gods played an active role in human affairs, and they sought to maintain their favor through prayer, sacrifices, and other religious rituals. The Pax Deorum, or peace of the gods, was a key concept in Roman religion. The Romans believed that the prosperity and stability of the state depended on maintaining good relations with the gods. Any perceived offense to the gods, such as neglecting religious rituals or disrespecting sacred places, could bring about misfortune and disaster. In addition to the major gods and goddesses, the Romans also worshipped a variety of lesser deities, spirits, and ancestors. They believed that these spirits inhabited the natural world and could influence human lives. The Laras and Penates were household gods who were worshipped in the home. The Manes were the spirits of deceased ancestors who were honored with offerings and rituals. The Romans also adopted many foreign gods and goddesses into their pantheon, particularly as they expanded their empire. The worship of Isis, an Egyptian goddess, and Mithras, a Persian god, became popular in Rome. The rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire was a gradual and complex process. Christianity emerged in the 1st century CE in Judea, a Roman province. The early Christians were persecuted by the Roman authorities, who viewed them as a threat to the established order. However, Christianity continued to spread, particularly among the poor and marginalized. The teachings of Jesus, which emphasized love, compassion, and forgiveness, resonated with many people who were disillusioned with the traditional Roman religion. The promise of eternal life and salvation also appealed to those who were struggling with the hardships of life. Over time, Christianity gained more and more followers. By the 4th century CE, it had become a significant force in the Roman Empire. In 313 CE, Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which granted religious tolerance to Christians. Constantine himself converted to Christianity, and he played a key role in promoting the religion. In 380 CE, Emperor Theodosius I declared Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. The traditional Roman religion was gradually suppressed, and its temples were closed or converted into churches. The adoption of Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire had a profound impact on Roman society and culture. Christianity influenced Roman art, literature, philosophy, and law. It also changed the way that people thought about morality, ethics, and the meaning of life. The rise of Christianity marked a major turning point in Roman history, and it helped to shape the development of Western civilization. The shift from polytheism to monotheism brought about significant changes in the social and political landscape of the Roman Empire. The Christian Church became a powerful institution, and it played an increasingly important role in the affairs of the state. The legacy of Roman religion, both its polytheistic roots and its eventual embrace of Christianity, continues to be felt today. The art, architecture, and literature of the Roman Empire reflect the religious beliefs and practices of its people. Fact 11. Roman family life, structure, roles, and social hierarchy. Roman family life was a cornerstone of Roman society, deeply influencing social structures, political power, and cultural values. The familia, family, extended beyond the nuclear unit to include all those living under the authority of the paterfamilias, father of the family, including slaves, freedmen, and distant relatives. The roles within the family were strictly defined, with the paterfamilias holding absolute power and responsibility. Understanding the intricacies of Roman family life provides essential insight into the broader dynamics of Roman society. At the heart of Roman family life was the concept of patria potestas, the father's power. The paterfamilias had legal authority over all members of his household, including his wife, children, and slaves. He could even, in theory, sell his children into slavery or have them put to death, although these extreme measures were rare in practice, especially during the later Republic and the Empire. The paterfamilias was responsible for the welfare and education of his family. He made all important decisions for the family, including matters of marriage, property, and career. He also represented the family in legal and political affairs. The role of women in Roman family life was subordinate to that of men, but they still held significant responsibilities and influence. Roman women were responsible for managing the household, raising children, and overseeing the work of slaves. They also played an important role in maintaining family traditions and religious observances. While women could not hold public office or vote, they could exert influence through their husbands and sons. Wealthy women often had considerable power and influence behind the scenes. Roman women had more legal rights than women in many other ancient societies. They could own property, conduct business, and divorce their husbands, although divorce was relatively rare. However, their legal rights were still limited compared to those of men. Children were highly valued in Roman society, as they were seen as the future of the family and the state. Roman parents invested heavily in the education of their children, particularly their sons. Boys from wealthy families were often tutored at home or sent to private schools. They learned Latin, Greek, rhetoric, and other subjects that would prepare them for a career in politics or law. Girls from wealthy families were also educated, but their education typically focused on domestic skills and the arts. Poor children often received little or no formal education. They learned the skills they needed to survive by working alongside their parents. Marriage was an important institution in Roman society. It was seen as a way to ensure the continuation of the family line and to provide stability for the state. Marriages were often arranged by the parents of the bride and groom, with the primary consideration being the social and economic status of the families involved. Roman marriages could be either cum manu or sine manu. In a cum manu marriage, the wife came under the legal authority of her husband. In a sine manu marriage, the wife remained under the legal authority of her father. By the late Republic, sine manu marriages had become more common as they gave women more independence and control over their own property. The Roman family was not just a social unit, it was also an economic unit. The family owned property, conducted business, and produced goods. Slaves played an important role in the Roman economy, and they were often considered to be part of the family. Freedmen, who were former slaves who had been granted their freedom, often maintained close ties with their former owners and continued to work for them. The social hierarchy of Roman society was closely tied to family status. Wealthy and powerful families held positions of influence in government and society. Poor families had limited opportunities for advancement. The Roman family was a complex and dynamic institution that played a central role in Roman society. Its structure, roles, and social hierarchy shaped the lives of individuals and influenced the course of Roman history. The concept of pietas, or devotion to family, gods, and state, was a core value in Roman society. Romans were expected to be loyal to their families and to uphold the traditions of their ancestors. The emphasis on family values helped to create a strong sense of social cohesion and stability in Roman society. The legacy of the Roman family continues to influence modern Western culture, particularly in areas such as family law, inheritance, and social customs. Fact 12. Roman gladiatorial combat, spectacle, society, and morality. Gladiatorial combat was a central and often brutal spectacle in Roman society, encompassing far more than just simple entertainment. It was a complex phenomenon intertwined with Roman values, politics, social structure, and even morality. Gladiatorial games served various purposes, from honoring the dead to celebrating military victories and providing a controlled outlet for violence. The gladiators themselves, often slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals, became both objects of fascination and symbols of courage, skill, and even rebellion. The origins of gladiatorial combat can be traced back to funeral games in ancient Italy. These games were originally held to honor deceased warriors and to provide a symbolic offering to the gods. Over time, gladiatorial combat evolved from a religious ritual into a form of public entertainment. The first recorded gladiatorial games in Rome were held in 264 BCE during the First Punic War. These early games were relatively simple affairs, but they quickly grew in popularity and scale. By the time of the Roman Empire, gladiatorial games had become a major part of Roman culture. Gladiators were typically slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals who were trained to fight in the arena. They were often purchased by lanisti, who were gladiatorial trainers and managers. The lanisti ran gladiatorial schools, where gladiators were trained in various fighting styles and armed with different types of weapons. Some gladiators were highly skilled and became famous for their prowess in the arena. These gladiators could earn considerable wealth and even their freedom. However, the life of a gladiator was generally brutal and short. They faced a high risk of injury or death in the arena. There were many different types of gladiators, each with their own unique fighting style and equipment. The Thraex was a lightly armed gladiator who carried a curved sword called a sicca and a small shield. The Murmillo was a heavily armed gladiator who carried a gladius, a short sword, a large shield, and a helmet with a crest shaped like a fish. The Retiarius was a lightly armed gladiator who carried a net and a trident. The Retiarius would try to ensnare his opponent with the net and then stab him with the trident. The Secutor was a heavily armed gladiator who was typically paired against the Retiarius. The Secutor carried a gladius, a large shield, and a smooth helmet that would prevent the Retiarius from entangling him with the net. Gladiatorial games were held in amphitheaters, which were large oval-shaped arenas that could accommodate thousands of spectators. The most famous amphitheater was the Colosseum in Rome, which could seat up to 50,000 people. The games typically began with a procession of gladiators and officials into the arena. The gladiators would then perform a series of mock battles to warm up the crowd. The actual combat would then begin, with pairs of gladiators fighting each other to the death or until one of them surrendered. The fate of the defeated gladiator was often decided by the crowd, who could signal for him to be spared or killed. If the crowd wanted the gladiator to be killed, they would give a thumbs down signal. If they wanted him to be spared, they would wave their handkerchiefs. Gladiatorial games were not just a form of entertainment. They were also a political tool. Emperors and other politicians often sponsored gladiatorial games to gain popularity with the people. The games were also used to celebrate military victories and to demonstrate the power of the Roman state. Gladiatorial combat also reflected the social hierarchy of Roman society. The gladiators themselves were often from the lower classes, while the spectators were from all levels of society. The games provided a temporary release from the tensions and inequalities of daily life. The morality of gladiatorial combat was a subject of debate in Roman society. Some Romans viewed it as a barbaric and cruel spectacle, while others saw it as a test of courage and skill. Some philosophers, such as Seneca, condemned gladiatorial combat as immoral and inhumane. However, the popularity of gladiatorial games persisted for centuries. Gladiatorial combat began to decline in the 4th century CE as Christianity became the dominant religion in the Roman Empire. Christians viewed gladiatorial combat as incompatible with their beliefs, and they successfully lobbied for its abolition. The last recorded gladiatorial games in Rome were held in 404 CE. Gladiatorial combat, despite its brutality, offers a glimpse into the complex values and social dynamics of the Roman world. The gladiators themselves, though often forced into their role, became symbols of strength and resilience. The spectacle of the arena served as both entertainment and a way for the Romans to grapple with themes of life, death, honor, and power. The legacy of gladiatorial combat continues to fascinate and provoke discussion about the nature of violence, entertainment, and the human condition. Fact 13. Roman food and dining, customs, ingredients, and social significance. Roman food and dining customs were deeply intertwined with social status, cultural values, and regional diversity. From the simple meals of the peasant class to the elaborate banquets of the wealthy elite, food played a significant role in Roman society, reflecting economic disparities, culinary innovations, and the ongoing interaction with diverse cultures across the vast empire. Understanding Roman food and dining provides valuable insights into daily life, social hierarchies, and the broader cultural landscape of the Roman world. The Roman diet varied greatly depending on social class and geographic location. The poor typically ate simple meals consisting of grains, vegetables, and legumes. Wheat was the staple grain, and it was often made into bread, porridge, or pasta. Vegetables such as beans, lentils, cabbage, and onions were also common. Meat was a luxury for the poor, but they might occasionally eat small amounts of fish or poultry. The wealthy, on the other hand, enjoyed a much more varied and elaborate diet. They ate a wide range of meats, including beef, pork, lamb, and game. They also ate fish, shellfish, and poultry. Vegetables and fruits were plentiful, and they often imported exotic ingredients from other parts of the empire. Roman cuisine was influenced by Greek, Etruscan, and other Mediterranean cultures. The Romans adopted many Greek cooking techniques and ingredients, such as olive oil, wine, and herbs. They also incorporated new ingredients and dishes from the regions they conquered. Roman cooks were known for their use of spices and herbs, which they used to enhance the flavor of their dishes. Some of the most common spices included pepper, cumin, coriander, and ginger. Roman herbs included rosemary, thyme, oregano, and basil. Dining customs also varied depending on social class. The poor typically ate their meals at home, sitting on stools or benches around a simple table. The wealthy often ate their meals in a dining room called a triclinium. The triclinium was furnished with couches where guests would recline while they ate. Roman banquets were elaborate affairs, often lasting for several hours. Guests were entertained by music, dancing, and poetry recitations. The food was served in multiple courses, each featuring a different set of dishes. Roman banquets were not just about food, they were also about social interaction and networking. Wine was an important part of the Roman diet, and it was consumed by people of all social classes. The Romans produced wine in many different regions of the empire, and they imported wine from other parts of the world. Roman wine was often flavored with herbs, spices, or honey. water was also consumed, but it was not always considered to be safe to drink. The Romans built aqueducts to bring fresh water to their cities, but the water was often contaminated. Roman food and dining practices reflected the social hierarchy of Roman society. The wealthy used food to display their wealth and status, while the poor had to make do with simple and often meager meals. Roman cuisine was also influenced by cultural exchange and innovation. The Romans adopted new ingredients and cooking techniques from the regions they conquered, and they developed their own unique culinary traditions. The legacy of Roman food and dining continues to influence modern cuisine. Many of the ingredients and dishes that are popular today, such as pasta, pizza, and olive oil, have their origins in Roman cuisine. The Roman emphasis on fresh, seasonal ingredients and simple cooking techniques remains relevant today. The social and cultural significance of food in Roman society provides valuable insights into the daily lives, values, and interactions of people across the vast empire. Fact 14. Roman innovations, concrete, aqueducts, and beyond. Roman innovations in engineering, architecture, and technology transformed the ancient world and left a lasting legacy on Western civilization. The Romans were not necessarily the first to invent these technologies, but they perfected and applied them on a scale never before seen, creating infrastructure, buildings, and systems that enabled the growth and prosperity of their vast empire. Understanding Roman innovations provides valuable insights into their ingenuity, their practical approach to problem solving, and their lasting contributions to human progress. One of the most important Roman innovations was concrete. Roman concrete was made from a mixture of lime, volcanic ash, pozzolana, and water. This mixture created a strong and durable material that could be used to build a wide range of structures, including aqueducts, bridges, amphitheaters, and buildings. Roman concrete was superior to earlier forms of concrete, and it allowed the Romans to build structures that were larger, stronger, and more durable than anything that had been built before. The use of concrete revolutionized Roman architecture and engineering. Roman aqueducts were another important innovation. Aqueducts were used to transport fresh water from distant sources to urban centers. The Romans built hundreds of aqueducts throughout their empire, some of which were over 100 kilometers long. Aqueducts were typically constructed using a combination of gravity and arches. The water flowed through a channel that was built on top of the arches. The Romans carefully engineered the aqueducts to ensure that the water flowed at a steady rate and that it was protected from contamination. Roman aqueducts provided a reliable supply of fresh water to Roman cities, which helped to improve public health and sanitation. Roman roads were another important innovation. The Romans built a vast network of roads that connected all parts of their empire. These roads were used for trade, communication, and military transportation. Roman roads were typically constructed using a layered system. The bottom layer was made of compacted earth, followed by a layer of gravel, a layer of small stones, and a top layer of paving stones. Roman roads were well engineered and durable, and they allowed for the rapid movement of people and goods throughout the empire. Beyond concrete, aqueducts, and roads, the Romans also made significant innovations in other areas, such as sanitation. The Romans developed sophisticated sewer systems to remove waste from their cities. They also built public bathhouses, which helped to promote hygiene and prevent the spread of disease. Heating. The Romans invented the hypocaust, a system of underfloor heating that was used to heat bathhouses and other buildings. Glass blowing. The Romans developed the technique of glass blowing, which allowed them to produce glass objects quickly and efficiently. Law. The Romans developed a sophisticated system of law that influenced the development of legal systems throughout the world. Military technology. The Romans developed a variety of military technologies, such as siege engines, catapults, and the gladius, a short sword. Roman innovations had a profound impact on the development of civilization. Roman engineering techniques and architectural styles have been adopted and adapted by cultures throughout the world. Roman art has inspired countless artists and writers. The study of Roman art and architecture continues to be an important part of art history and cultural studies. The use of concrete, the development of arches and vaults, and the emphasis on functionality have all had a lasting impact on architecture. The realistic portraiture and narrative scenes in Roman art have influenced artists for centuries. The monumental scale and grandeur of Roman buildings continue to inspire awe and admiration. The ruins of Roman cities and monuments serve as a reminder of the power and ingenuity of the Roman civilization. The integration of art and architecture into public life in Roman society highlights the importance of aesthetics and cultural expression. Fact 15. The Roman language, Latin's evolution and influence. The Roman language, Latin, was the language of law, literature, administration, and everyday life in the Roman Empire. Its evolution from a local dialect to a dominant language and its subsequent influence on the development of numerous modern languages, including Romance languages such as Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, make it a crucial element in understanding Roman civilization and its enduring legacy. Studying the evolution, characteristics, and influence of Latin provides valuable insights into the linguistic and cultural foundations of Western civilization. Latin originated as a local dialect spoken in the region of Latium, which included the city of Rome. As Rome expanded its power and influence, Latin spread throughout Italy and eventually became the dominant language of the Roman Republic. With the establishment of the Roman Empire, Latin spread throughout much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Latin was used in government, law, education, and literature. It was also the language of the Roman army and of trade. There were two main forms of Latin: Classical Latin and Vulgar Latin. Classical Latin was the standard form of Latin used by educated Romans in writing and formal speech. Vulgar Latin was the colloquial form of Latin spoken by the common people. Vulgar Latin varied from region to region, and it was the ancestor of the Romance languages. The grammar of Latin was complex and highly inflected. Latin words changed their form depending on their function in a sentence. Nouns, adjectives, and pronouns had different endings depending on their case, number, and gender. Verbs had different endings depending on their tense, mood, person, and number. The complex grammar of Latin allowed for a great deal of precision and nuance in expression. Latin literature was rich and diverse. Roman writers produced works of poetry, drama, history, philosophy, and rhetoric. Some of the most famous Roman writers include Virgil, Cicero, Horace, Ovid, and Seneca. Latin literature had a profound influence on the development of Western literature. Many of the themes, styles, and forms that are found in Western literature can be traced back to Latin literature. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Latin continued to be used as a language of scholarship, religion, and diplomacy. Latin was the language of the Catholic Church, and it was used in the liturgy, the Bible, and other religious texts. Latin was also used in universities and other institutions of learning. Latin was the language of diplomacy and international relations for centuries. Latin has had a profound influence on the English language. Many English words are derived from Latin words. Latin has also influenced the grammar and syntax of English. The study of Latin can help students to improve their vocabulary, grammar, and writing skills. The influence of Latin extends beyond the Romance languages and English, impacting fields such as science, medicine, and law, where Latin terms are still widely used. The preservation of Latin texts throughout the Middle Ages ensured the survival of classical knowledge and its transmission to subsequent generations. The continued study of Latin provides a direct connection to the intellectual and cultural heritage of the Roman world and its lasting impact on Western civilization. The evolution of Latin from a local dialect to a global language reflects the power and influence of the Roman Empire and its enduring legacy. Fact 16. The Byzantine Empire. Continuation and transformation of Rome. The Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire, represented a continuation and transformation of Roman civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. For over 1,000 years, the Byzantine Empire preserved Roman traditions, laws, and institutions, while also developing its own unique cultural identity, characterized by Greek language and culture, Orthodox Christianity, and a sophisticated political and administrative system. Understanding the Byzantine Empire is crucial to understanding the long-term legacy of Rome and its enduring influence on the Eastern Mediterranean, Eastern Europe, and beyond. The Byzantine Empire emerged from the Eastern Roman Empire in the late 4th century CE. When Emperor Theodosius I divided the Roman Empire into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 CE, but the Eastern Roman Empire survived and continued to thrive. The capital of the Byzantine Empire was Constantinople, which had been founded by Emperor Constantine I in 330 CE. Constantinople was strategically located on the Bosporus Strait, which controlled trade between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Constantinople became a major center of trade, culture, and learning. The Byzantine Empire preserved many Roman traditions, laws, and institutions. The Byzantine emperors continued to use Roman titles, such as Augustus and Caesar. They also maintained Roman laws and legal procedures. The Byzantine army was organized along Roman lines, and it used Roman military tactics. However, the Byzantine Empire also developed its own unique cultural identity. The official language of the Byzantine Empire was Greek, not Latin. The Byzantine emperors were Orthodox Christians, and they played an active role in the affairs of the church. Byzantine art and architecture were distinct from Roman art and architecture, characterized by elaborate mosaics, icons, and domed churches. The Byzantine Empire reached its height under the Macedonian dynasty in the 9th and 10th century CE. During this period, the Byzantine Empire expanded its territory, revived its economy, and promoted its culture. The Byzantine army reconquered much of the Balkans, and Byzantine missionaries spread Orthodox Christianity to the Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe. Byzantine art and architecture flourished, and Byzantine scholars preserved and translated classical Greek texts. The Byzantine Empire faced numerous challenges throughout its history. The empire was constantly threatened by foreign invaders, such as the Persians, the Arabs, the Bulgarians, and the Turks. The empire also faced internal conflicts, such as religious disputes and political rivalries. Despite these challenges, the Byzantine Empire survived for over 1,000 years. The Byzantine Empire played an important role in preserving classical knowledge, promoting Christianity, and serving as a buffer between Europe and the Muslim world. The Byzantine Empire gradually declined in the late Middle Ages. The empire was weakened by internal conflicts and external pressures. In 1453, Constantinople was captured by the Ottoman Turks, bringing an end to the Byzantine Empire. The fall of Constantinople was a major turning point in world history. It marked the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of Ottoman dominance in the Eastern Mediterranean. The legacy of the Byzantine Empire is profound and far-reaching. The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman traditions and institutions, which influenced the development of Western civilization. The Byzantine Empire also spread Orthodox Christianity to Eastern Europe, which shaped the culture and identity of many Slavic nations. Byzantine art and architecture have inspired artists and architects for centuries. The preservation of classical Greek texts by Byzantine scholars ensured the survival of ancient knowledge and its transmission to the Renaissance. The Byzantine legal system influenced the development of law in Eastern Europe and beyond. The strategic location of Constantinople as a center of trade and cultural exchange contributed to the economic and cultural development of the region. Fact 17. The Roman economy, trade, agriculture, and infrastructure. Roman trade and commerce were essential for the economic prosperity and integration of the Roman Empire. A vast network of trade routes, both land and sea, connected distant regions, facilitating the exchange of goods, resources, and ideas. The Roman economy thrived on the efficient movement of commodities such as grain, wine, olive oil, manufactured goods, and luxury items. Understanding the networks and commodities involved in Roman trade and commerce provides valuable insights into the economic foundations and global connections of the Roman world. Roman trade routes extended throughout the Mediterranean region, as well as into Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roman merchants traveled by land and sea, using well-maintained roads and navigable waterways. The Roman army played an important role in protecting trade routes from bandits and pirates. The Roman government also invested in infrastructure, such as harbors, warehouses, and marketplaces to facilitate trade. One of the most important commodities traded in the Roman Empire was grain. Rome relied on imports of grain from North Africa, Egypt, and other regions to feed its large population. The grain trade was carefully regulated by the Roman government, which ensured that there was a sufficient supply of grain to prevent food shortages and riots. Other important commodities included wine, olive oil, and manufactured goods. Wine was produced in Italy, Gaul, and Spain, and it was exported throughout the empire. Olive oil was produced in Italy, North Africa, and Spain, and it was used for cooking, lighting, and bathing. Manufactured goods, such as pottery, textiles, and metalwork, were produced in various regions of the empire and traded throughout the Roman world. Luxury items were also an important part of Roman trade. Wealthy Romans purchased luxury goods from all over the empire and beyond. These goods included silk from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa. The trade in luxury goods was often very profitable, but also involved significant risks, such as piracy and shipwrecks. Roman merchants established trading posts and settlements in distant lands to facilitate trade. These trading posts served as centers for the exchange of goods and information. They also helped to spread Roman culture and influence. The Roman government played an active role in promoting trade and commerce. The government standardized weights and measures, created a common currency, and enforced contracts. The government also built and maintained infrastructure such as roads, harbors, and marketplaces. The government's policies helped to create a stable and predictable environment for trade, which encouraged economic growth and prosperity. Roman trade had a significant impact on the development of the Roman Empire. Trade brought wealth and resources to Rome, which allowed the city to grow and prosper. Trade also facilitated the exchange of ideas and culture, which helped to create a more unified and cosmopolitan society. The integration of diverse regions into a single economic system through trade fostered interdependence and stability. The rise of a merchant class contributed to the growth of urban centers and the development of a more complex economy. The Roman emphasis on standardized weights, measures, and currency facilitated trade and reduced transaction costs. The legacy of Roman trade continues to be felt today in the form of global trade networks and international commerce. Fact 18. Roman women. Roles, rights, and influence. Roman women occupied a complex and multifaceted position in Roman society. While they were generally excluded from formal political power and public office, they played significant roles in family life, economic activity, and religious observances. The rights and freedoms of Roman women varied depending on their social class, marital status, and the period of Roman history. Understanding the roles, rights, and influence of Roman women provides valuable insights into the social dynamics and gender relations of the Roman world. The roles of Roman women were primarily defined by their family and household responsibilities. Roman women were expected to marry and bear children, and they were responsible for raising and educating their children. They also managed the household, oversaw the work of slaves, and supervised the family's finances. In wealthy families, women might also be involved in managing the family's business affairs. The legal rights of Roman women were limited compared to those of men. Women could not vote, hold public office, or serve in the army. They were also subject to the authority of their fathers or husbands. However, Roman women did have some legal rights. They could own property, conduct business, and make wills. They could also divorce their husbands, although divorce was relatively rare. The influence of Roman women extended beyond the domestic sphere. Women could exert influence through their husbands and sons. Wealthy women often had considerable power and influence behind the scenes. They could advise their husbands on political matters, and they could use their wealth and social connections to advance their family's interests. Some Roman women were also patrons of the arts and sciences, and they supported writers, artists, and intellectuals. The lives of Roman women varied greatly depending on their social class. Wealthy women enjoyed a life of luxury and privilege. They had access to education, fine clothing, and elaborate entertainment. They could also travel and participate in social events. Poor women, on the other hand, faced a much more difficult life. They often worked as laborers, domestic servants, or prostitutes. They had limited access to education and health care, and they were often subjected to abuse and exploitation. The status of Roman women changed over time. During the early Republic, women were subject to the authority of their fathers or husbands throughout their lives. They had limited legal rights and little social influence. However, during the late Republic and the Empire, women gained more freedom and independence. They were able to own property, conduct business, and divorce their husbands. They also played a more prominent role in public life. The perception of Roman women in historical sources is often shaped by the biases and perspectives of male authors. It is important to consider the limitations of these sources when studying the lives of Roman women. Archaeological evidence, such as inscriptions and artifacts, can provide additional insights into the lives of Roman women. The diversity of experiences among Roman women, based on their social class, geographic location, and historical period, highlights the complexity of gender roles in Roman society. The concept of familia, which included all members of the household, emphasized the importance of women in maintaining family traditions and values. The influence of powerful women, such as Livia Drusilla and Agrippina the Younger, demonstrates the ability of women to exert political power even in the absence of formal authority. Fact 19. Roman slavery. Forms, conditions, and resistance. Roman slavery was a pervasive and integral part of the Roman economy and social structure. Slaves performed a wide range of tasks, from agricultural labor and mining to domestic service and skilled craftsmanship. The conditions of slavery varied greatly depending on the slave's role, owner, and geographic location. While some slaves were treated relatively well, many endured harsh conditions and brutal treatment. Resistance to slavery took various forms, from individual acts of defiance to large-scale rebellions. Understanding the complexities of Roman slavery is crucial to understanding the social and economic foundations of the Roman world. Slavery was a widespread practice in the ancient world, but it was particularly prevalent in Roman society. Slaves made up a significant portion of the Roman population, perhaps as much as 20 to 30% during the peak of the empire. The Romans acquired slaves through various means, including warfare, piracy, and trade. Many slaves were prisoners of war who were captured during Roman conquests. Others were kidnapped by pirates or purchased from slave traders. Slaves came from many different regions of the world, including Europe, Africa, and Asia. The conditions of slavery varied greatly depending on the slave's role, owner, and geographic location. Some slaves were treated relatively well and lived comfortable lives. These slaves often worked as domestic servants, tutors, or skilled craftsmen. They might have been educated and given some degree of autonomy. Other slaves endured harsh conditions and brutal treatment. These slaves often worked in mines, quarries, or on large agricultural estates. They were forced to work long hours under difficult conditions, and they were often subjected to physical abuse. Slaves had very few legal rights in Roman society. They were considered to be property, and they could be bought, sold, or punished at the whim of their owners. Slaves could not own property, marry without their owner's permission, or testify in court. However, some Roman laws did provide some protection for slaves. For example, it was illegal to kill a slave without good reason, and slaves could sometimes appeal to the authorities if they were being mistreated. Resistance to slavery took various forms. Some slaves resisted their owners through individual acts of defiance, such as running away, stealing, or sabotaging their work. Others participated in organized rebellions. The most famous slave rebellion was led by Spartacus in 73 to 71 BCE. Spartacus was a Thracian gladiator who led a large army of slaves and gladiators against the Roman Republic. The Spartacus rebellion was eventually crushed, but it demonstrated the potential for slaves to resist their oppressors. The Roman attitude towards slavery was complex and contradictory. Some Romans defended slavery as a natural and necessary part of society. They argued that slaves were inherently inferior to free people and that slavery was beneficial for both slaves and owners. Other Romans criticized slavery as immoral and unjust. They argued that all people were born free and equal, and that slavery was a violation of human rights. Some Roman philosophers, such as Seneca, advocated for the humane treatment of slaves. The decline of the Roman Empire led to a gradual decline in slavery. As the empire's economy weakened and its military power diminished, the supply of slaves decreased. The rise of Christianity also contributed to the decline of slavery. Christian teachings emphasized the equality of all people before God, and some Christians advocated for the abolition of slavery. By the Middle Ages, slavery had largely disappeared in Western Europe, although it continued to exist in other parts of the world. Roman slavery had a profound impact on Roman society and culture. It shaped the economy, the social hierarchy, and the moral values of the Roman world. The legacy of Roman slavery continues to be felt today. The history of Roman slavery serves as a reminder of the injustices and inequalities that have existed throughout human history. The study of Roman slavery provides valuable insights into the dynamics of power, exploitation, and resistance. The different forms of resistance employed by slaves, from individual acts of defiance to large-scale rebellions, highlight the human desire for freedom and dignity. The ethical debates surrounding slavery in Roman society reflect the ongoing struggle to define justice and equality. Fact 20. Roman trade and commerce. Networks and commodities. Roman trade and commerce were essential for the economic prosperity and integration of the Roman Empire. A vast network of trade routes, both land and sea, connected distant regions, facilitating the exchange of goods, resources, and ideas. The Roman economy thrived on the efficient movement of commodities such as grain, wine, olive oil, manufactured goods, and luxury items. Understanding the networks and commodities involved in Roman trade and commerce provides valuable insights into the economic foundations and global connections of the Roman world. Roman trade routes extended throughout the Mediterranean region, as well as into Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roman merchants traveled by land and sea, using well-maintained roads and navigable waterways. The Roman army played an important role in protecting trade routes from bandits and pirates. The Roman government also invested in infrastructure, such as harbors, warehouses, and marketplaces to facilitate trade. One of the most important commodities traded in the Roman Empire was grain. Rome relied on imports of grain from North Africa, Egypt, and other regions to feed its large population. The grain trade was carefully regulated by the Roman government, which ensured that there was a sufficient supply of grain to prevent food shortages and riots. Other important commodities included wine, olive oil, and manufactured goods. Wine was produced in Italy, Gaul, and Spain, and it was exported throughout the empire. Olive oil was produced in Italy, North Africa, and Spain, and it was used for cooking, lighting, and bathing. Manufactured goods, such as pottery, textiles, and metalwork, were produced in various regions of the empire and traded throughout the Roman world. Luxury items were also an important part of Roman trade. Wealthy Romans purchased luxury goods from all over the empire and beyond. These goods included silk from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa. The trade in luxury goods was often very profitable, but also involved significant risks, such as piracy and shipwrecks. Roman merchants established trading posts and settlements in distant lands to facilitate trade. These trading posts served as centers for the exchange of goods and information. They also helped to spread Roman culture and influence. The Roman government played an active role in promoting trade and commerce. The government standardized weights and measures, created a common currency, and enforced contracts. The government also built and maintained infrastructure such as roads, harbors, and marketplaces. The government's policies helped to create a stable and predictable environment for trade, which encouraged economic growth and prosperity. Roman trade had a significant impact on the development of the Roman Empire. Trade brought wealth and resources to Rome, which allowed the city to grow and prosper. Trade also facilitated the exchange of ideas and culture, which helped to create a more unified and cosmopolitan society. The integration of diverse regions into a single economic system through trade fostered interdependence and stability. The rise of a merchant class contributed to the growth of urban centers and the development of a more complex economy. The Roman emphasis on standardized weights, measures, and currency facilitated trade and reduced transaction costs. The legacy of Roman trade continues to be felt today in the form of global trade networks and international commerce.